So you guys have seen me playing very often on the channel chord progressions like and usually when I play these chord progressions, the focus is on the last chord, the diminished 7th chord. Okay, particularly when you make it into the typical Neo Soul diminished 7th move, like this. And there are already a couple of lessons on the channel, which I will link in the description below, that explain the diminished 7 chords, how they work, why you can move them by 3 half steps, and more importantly, they explain the secondary diminished 7th chord substitution, which essentially means that you use the diminished 7th chord as the upper part of a dominant 7th altered chord. Now what I want to do today is actually showing an even easier, simpler, if you like, way to look at the diminished 7 chords and understand very quickly what is the diminished 7 chord that you can add to your favorite chord progressions and where it actually comes from. Now let's assume that we have a 5-1 minor in the key of G minor. So the 5-7 would be a D7 chord, and the 1 minor a G minor, G minor 7. Okay, this is a typical 5-1 minor, and it creates the tension, which then resolves to the 1 minor, to the G minor, the tonic chord. Now, very often when we have a 5-1 minor, we want to make the 5-7, the D7, you know, an altered dominant 7th chord. Okay, because an altered dominant 7 chord actually creates even more tension to release on the 1 minor. And when we think about altered dominant 7 chords, the most common alteration that comes to our mind is actually the flat 9, so making the D7 a D7 flat 9, which we could play like this. Okay, you guys may already know this position, may already be aware of this position, or possibly you have learned it on the channel before. Now, as I said, today I want to actually start from the typical D7 simple A shape of the caged system that most of you will already know, and explain how you can look at the diminished 7 chord hidden in this chord position to really understand how to use diminished 7 chords anytime you like. Now, once we have our 5-7 flat 9, so D7 flat 9 for example, in order to play the diminished 7 chord, which we can use to replace the D7 flat 9, or essentially use the diminished 7 chord as the chord which is the upper part of a D7 flat 9, we need to play that D7 flat 9 rootless. But even before that, we need to know what the flat 9 actually is. And when I look at a dominant 7 flat 9 chord, the flat 9 is nothing but, or the flat 2, is nothing but the note which is half step above the root. So if D is my root, E flat will be my flat 9. So guess what? I can actually stay on my D7 simple chord position. This is an A shape of the caged system that most of you will already know. And what I can do, I can simply replace the D note, my root, with my flat 9. So essentially play an E flat instead of a D in the bass, and I've got my E flat diminished 7th chord, which is one of the 4 possible diminished 7 chords that you can use to replace a D7 flat 9. Okay. The reason why I say 4 diminished 7 chords is because we know already that once you have a diminished 7 chord, you can move it by 3 half steps every time and you're still playing the same chord, okay, because this is a symmetrical chord. So in other words, our 5-7 in G minor can be turned into this and immediately has that R&B and Neo Soul flavor that we all love, especially when you play that diminished 7 chord with the Neo Soul move. This sounds really cool, but if you think about it, it's something extremely simple. It's just a 5-7, where we know that we want to make it a 5-7 flat 9 by playing an E diminished 7th, Neo Soul move 3 half steps higher, for example, which then releases the tension on the G minor 7, the tonic. So, to recap, we have learned that we can play any dominant 7 chord that we want to turn in a dominant 7 flat 9 chord to play rootless, to hear that diminished 7 chord hidden in the dominant 7 flat 9 chord by simply replacing the root note with the note half step higher than the root itself. And this gives us the diminished 7 chord, which then, if you like, you can also move by 3 half steps in any direction you like to then resolve on the 1 minor. Now remember guys that you can do this, that you can apply this trick even if you're not going to the 1 minor or to the 1 in general, even if you are going to another chord of your chord progression. All you have to do is thinking about what would it be the 5/7 of the chord I'm going to, and then instead of playing that 5/7, which is the secondary dominant, you play a diminished 7 chord which starts half step higher than that 5/7, which is the secondary dominant. And what you are left with is a diminished 7 chord, which is the secondary diminished 7 chord. And if you like, you can stay there or move it by 3 half steps and you're still playing the same chord. This allows you to really use your creativity because there are a number of possible combinations available to you now anytime you play a simple 3-4 chord progression. Right guys, let me know if you have any questions about this lesson, and remember that you can find the tab and the full music theory explanation on my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching this lesson guys, and thanks for your support here on YouTube and on Patreon. I'll see you on the next video.